breaking rocks out here on the chain gang, 'cause I done committed me a crime.
Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to Talking Jazz, episode 109. I have two guests here at Johnny O's right here in Bridgeport. Chuck Webb, Margaret Murphy-Webb, incredible musicians, incredible couple, and they are going to be performing at the Chicago Jazz Festival September 1st on the Jazz and Heritage Stage, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. It's the Chuck Webb Band featuring Margaret Murphy-Webb. See, it's featuring Margaret Murphy-Webb. Guys, thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, man.
Chuck,
Thanks
this is
for
your
having me.
first time here. Margaret, it's your second.
Yes, I feel so special.
I'm glad we didn't scare you the first time, so you came back for the second.
She came back for the hot dogs and the fries.
I know, that's the first thing she asked about when she got here. So feel free to nibble while we're talking. But
Thank you.
it's really exciting, though. I mean, have you guys played on the Jazz Fest together in the past, or is this kind of the first time that you guys have ever played at the Chicago Jazz Festival together? I know you guys have played there different times.
This is our first time together.
Yes, it
We've
is.
played several other festivals, but this is the first time our hometown
Yes.
festival let us do something.
So
it's
how did
great.
this come about? Because, I mean, obviously you're both, well known in the circuit here in Chicago and beyond. And Chuck, you've got your band, and you guys play a lot. But, the concept of you're coming in with your band and having your wife, Margaret, headline, I mean, how did that whole thing come about to play at the Jazz Fest, I should say? Do you have a new album, or is it just kind of something that kind of came about?
All of that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a new album, No Smoke, No Mirrors. So we'll be playing a lot of tunes from the album, and then a lot of songs that Margaret is fond of. She'll be singing. And, we have this organization called the Southside Jazz Coalition. And so through Margaret's efforts, because she's the president, we made some connections, in the city.
Yep.
And one thing led to another, and we was able to get a spot on the Jazz Fest.
So before we move into the Southside Jazz Coalition, because I want to talk about that a little as well, and a bunch of other things with the performance at the Chicago Jazz Festival, what can people expect to hear? Because you play upright bass, you play electric,
Yep.
you play fusion, funk, rock, jazz,
Yep.
Broadway shows, everything else. So what are people going to expect to hear at the fest?
Well, there'll be no Broadway show music. But
Tribute to Hamilton, right
right,
there on
right.
stage.
Well, yeah, I just
That
played
would
that
go
the
over
other
well.
night.
I know.
I was thinking a lot about the set list for the festival, and I decided I was going to make it all acoustic, straight ahead jazz, because that's the thing.
Jazz Fest, yeah.
But I decided to put in a couple of songs from my CD that I will play electric bass on as well. So there'll be jazz, and there'll be more, definitely not smooth jazz, but more contemporary jazz stuff.
Yep.
So we'll be playing some standards that are rearranged to fit,
okay.
some cooler,
Yeah.
more modern tastes, and we'll be playing some electric stuff, and we'll be definitely swinging hard. So that will be the underlying thread. Of
Now,
the set.
are some of the tunes that are on your album, are they original compositions? So there's some original stuff?
Yeah,
you
I've
might
got
be
a couple
playing?
of original tunes on there and some standards and some. There is a song by Michael Brecker, one of his songs that I
okay.
really love,
Yeah.
and a Chick Corea song on there, a couple of straight ahead standards, and some of my original stuff.
So who's in the band besides Margaret?
I'm the most important person.
Below Margaret, there's me on bass. Our keyboard player is fantastic, Mr. Tom Weitzes.
Oh, Tommy, yep.
Charles Rick Heath is going to be playing drums on the
great.
festival, but another drummer, a great drummer as well, Ben Johnson, is on the CD. Steve Eisen is
yeah.
going to be playing saxophone and flute.
Wow, that's dynamite.
Yeah, I got a great band.
That's
it's so
dynamite.
easy when you got players that good.
I know, yeah. It's
And
it's
singers.
just,
That
And
we're not leaving you out. We're not leaving you out.
I'm being quiet.
Now, Margaret, really, what can we expect to hear at the Jazz Fest? No, I'm just. Now, what are they really going to play, Margaret?
I wish I could tell you, but I'll be in trouble.
So now you guys are playing. So this is the first time you're playing at the Chicago Jazz Fest, but you guys have been playing, obviously, for many, many years together. And one of the organizations that you guys have, I think you were founded it, was the Southside Jazz Coalition, and you have a regular hit
Yes.
once a month.
Yes, second
and I think
Tuesday.
you play on that too, right,
Yeah,
Chuck?
whenever
So
I
it's tell us a little bit about that since we're talking.
That is a continuation of Von Freeman's legacy of the Tuesday Night Jam.
Okay.
And because
From his apartment and lounge days,
the
right?
apartment
Yeah.
lounge, he was at the Matador, which is now the 50. Of course, I'm going to forget the name of the next club, and then he ended up at the new apartment, I think, for 24. 24 years.
Yeah,
Was it
that was a
24,
long time.
That was a long
Yeah.
time he was
This is
there.
going all over the world. Maybe some people don't know who Von Freeman is.
Von Freeman is a legendary tenor saxophone player who opted to stay in Chicago. and be-
Contemporary of Charlie Parker.
Yes,
and
yes. He
all-
played for Billie Holiday.
Yes.
He traveled the world, and then he decided to stay home and be a mentor.
Well, and he was one of those guys that he developed that big tenor sound, that Chicago
he
tenor
did.
sound,
Yes,
right?
he did.
I mean,
yes, he did.
who else was there? There was him. There was Jug,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And Eddie Harris.
Eddie Harris.
You know, I mean that was
Yes.
the time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, those guys were developing that sound.
Yeah.
So, and you performed with him regularly. So
Yes,
he
as
was
a matter
like your
of fact,
mentor,
I did the
right?
Jazz Fest with Von Freeman.
Oh, did
That
you?
was the first time I did the Jazz Fest, working with Von Freeman. I'm one of the blessed ones that I pretty much worked every club in the city with
Yeah.
Von.
So now with the Southside Jazz Coalition, you guys have a regular hit once a month. And then you're also, with the organization, you also are doing different things as far as trying to get music into the schools, into the neighborhoods. I mean, isn't there a whole initiative behind that? Or bring back the Southside Jazz Fest, South Shore Jazz
Yes,
Fest at some
that's
point?
why we got together in the first place. That was my big dream that I thought, without knowing about money, and you talked to me extensively about that, about money and production and the time that it would take to put together a festival. I thought it would be an easy thing to do, and I found out that it's not that easy. So
Well, that was I could never understand how it happened every year. It's such a massive undertaking when
and Geraldine DeHaas.
Geraldine was doing it and everything. And I mean, she would never let on how big of an undertaking it was when she was doing it. Because
Yes.
I can remember talking to her, she was completely calm. But if I was running it, I would have been as calm as she was. And it would somehow come together. And it was just amazing that it went on for that long. But the fact that you guys are trying to pursue that and push it out, I bet it's going to happen again.
I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to.
It
Now
just
that we're
takes
being
time.
noticed, I'm having a hot flash just thinking about all the work
that goes into
that
it.
goes into doing it, even just trying to get the permits. It's a big undertaking, but we are committed.
Now,
We're gonna make it happen.
you guys are doing jazz and you're trying to bring it back to the South Side.
Yes.
And
Well, we're bringing it back to the
Right,
South
you're
Side. I
bringing
mean,
it
the weekly Tuesday jams was going on for 3 years.
3 years. Yes.
okay.
At the 50-yard line in local place in Chicago on 75th Street.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that was every Tuesday night. It was a regular thing, and people could count on coming there for free,
Yep.
seeing some of the best jazz musicians. We had, international players would come in and sit in with us, and then local guys, young guys and females, women,
Right.
who wanted to get their chops together. Some had it together, some didn't. But the thing about
That's why we're
Margaret's
there.
jam session was that it was all inclusive, and it encouraged people, who are up and coming to play and learn. And a lot of jam sessions have this attitude that if you're not killing,
Right.
don't
Get off
even
the
get
stage,
on the
right.
stage,
Don't come to
right?
the stage, right.
And then, if it's like that everywhere, then where do you learn? You got to be able to get on stage and get your butt kicked sometimes, so you know what you have to work on.
That's it.
And so that's our thing. We're trying to make it open. Come play.
Learn.
Be ready when you
Come with
come
an
up.
open mind.
But if you're not ready, there's only one way to find out. You got to get up there and play.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And we are more mellow than Von because Von had that open door policy, but don't keep coming the same week,
Playing the same
killing the
tunes.
same tune,
Right.
thinking that you're doing something. He would throw you off the stage. Now, as
Yeah.
he got older, Mike, he got better.
Yeah.
But we're not like that. We're not going to put you off the stage, but you pull to the side and say, you got this tune down, learn a new tune.
I think I told you, the first time when I came back from North Texas, I went and sat in at Von's session, and I made the big mistake. Rob Amster was playing bass, and I told him, I just got back from North Texas. He's like, oh, really? Hey, Von. So he tells Von, I'm like, well, I've never heard a guy play Cherokee that fast and that long in my entire life. I was like hanging on, man. And it was amazing, though, because he kept his time. I don't know where I was, but he kept going. And then he got done, and he turns around. You should work on that.
Yeah.
No kidding.
We all have experiences like
Yeah,
that.
I
I think the
got
first time I sat in on Von's gig, I was just really getting my upright bass chops together. I was pretty much an electric bass player.
Okay.
And I played Matt
Ferguson's bass.
bass, and Matt's a great
Matt, we love
Chicago
you.
bass player.
Yeah.
And he played, for all you music heads, he, acoustic bass with gut strings about felt to me like 8 inches off the fingerboard, and I got up there. He didn't call Cherokee, but some up-tempo tune.
Yeah.
And about halfway through, I was like, okay, I'm dying. Let's end the tune. And I remember vividly looking, and there was a wall along the side of the club where people who were lined up to play and sit in on this tune, and it was like an endless line of sax players. And I was like, I'm never going to get out of this tune. It's never going to end. And my fingers were cramping up. I'll never forget that experience.
Suddenly there's just this sustained...
Yeah, it's like, can we play a ballad or something? Yeah, all right.
So now, Chuck, you're coming up. Did you grow up in Chicago?
I did.
Okay, so did you come up through the sessions? Did you go to college before? I mean, how did the whole thing come about? Did you start playing when you were in high school?
Yeah, well, I played. I started on violin very young.
Okay.
And then I switched to reed, so I played clarinet and bass clarinet in high school, and kind of was a closet bass player. But that was always my growing love, playing bass, and it was mostly R&B and a little jazz. And I got the nerve up to audition for University of Miami School of Music and got in.
Great school.
And that's where I started really getting serious about, playing, acoustic bass, electric bass, and jazz. I studied with a great bass teacher, Lucas Drew. And, so that was, I went 4 years down there and came back to Chicago, gigged, was fortunate to get in the jingle scene. So I became a studio musician back when there was real studio work.
Yeah.
And then was fortunate to get some road gigs and played with a few people.
Yeah. So I know we talked a little bit before we get into some of the people you played with, but you also, probably because you went to school and because you're so smooth on both upright and electric and all the different styles, you also play a lot of the shows downtown, a lot of the Broadway shows, and like you subbed on, I don't know if you subbed, you're like a regular sub or however you would say it now, but on Hamilton you play that show a lot, but you were on
played it yesterday.
So you were on a lot of those shows though, you get those long runs, right?
Yeah, that's a real blessing. I have had a chance to play a lot of long runs. I did Jersey Boys for over 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And a lot of big shows. I subbed on a lot of big shows, Wicked, and just a lot of those shows. And it's great work, very specific skill set that's needed for that kind of work. You got to have your eyes together. You have to be able to read. You have to be able to follow the conductor. And most importantly, you have to be able to show up on time every day.
That's actually a problem
That's
for people?
a thing. Well, not for the ones that are doing it,
Right.
but the ones who are not, they're like, well, how come they're not calling me? Because maybe you didn't. So, there's that.
I'm always curious, too, and I think this would be interesting for the people that are watching this that are musicians, and especially the guys that are coming up through school and they've got these different ideas on what they want to do. That's a hard scene to get into because there's only a finite number of gigs.
Yeah.
And so how did you, was it like you subbed for somebody and then you just kind of started getting calls?
Well, for me, I think some people who were contracting knew about me through the studio work that I was doing.
Oh, okay.
And my first, big show was The Wiz. Back when Stephanie Mills was, the star of The Wiz.
Wow.
And I basically got thrown in with no prior experience. I knew I could read and I knew what The Wiz was. And so it was kind of like, hey man, can you do this show? And I was like, yeah. And, fortunately I did a decent enough job to keep getting calls back.
Yeah.
But, for addressing what you said, most of the young guys, you really have to know somebody who's doing the gig and get in as a sub.
Yeah.
That's the main way you break into that thing. And subbing is much harder than being the regular guy because you don't get that everyday consistency to really learn the song.
Learn the conductor probably too, right? That's a whole other thing.
So you have to go in, you have to audit, you have to watch the show, you have to learn the book, and then you're thrown in there cold. And the gig is to make it sound like the regular guy.
Yeah.
Right? So the best compliment you can get from the other people in the orchestra is when they see you and they say, oh, I didn't know so-and-so wasn't even here. That's when you've done that, you've done your job. You just made it smooth, right? You don't want anybody to have to worry about the sub. So that's the thing.
So in your opinion, because this is something that I would imagine that some people are probably thinking about, if they've got a choice and somebody calls them to sub on one of those gigs, or they've got this other gig that pays like an extra $100, probably take the sub gig because that could lead to a lot more stuff rather than worry about the one-off things. You know what I mean?
A lot of musicians think about the short game.
Right.
They think, all right, I took this $100 gig But somebody called me to do a $150 gig, so I'm going to sub out on that gig and do the $150
Right.
gig. But meanwhile, the person that you said you were going to work for is now pissed at you and not going to call you back, right?
That's
so
it.
if you get called to sub on a show, you may have to put in 20 hours of work to do that one show. And people will say, well, why do I want to spend that much time? Because now your name is out there, assuming you do a good job,
Right.
for the next call. You
Yeah.
know, you sub on another one, you sub on another one. Sooner or later, you'll get the call to do, a long run. And man, a long run, the right show can buy your house
That's
and pay for your car, send your kids to school. I'm not joking. That's real
Thank
deal.
you, Jersey boy.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, that
Yes,
what a
indeed.
run, right? What
Yes,
a run.
indeed. Yeah.
So now, Margaret, what do you have happening with either your group or with the Southside Jazz Coalition or with anything else you have happening? Because I know you always have different gigs coming up and popping up. What should we
She's
be
so
aware of here? I mean,
I'm not as busy as you, baby. I'm doing Benny's Chop House every Saturday with Charlie Johnson.
What's the time on that? Because I know
That
that.
is from 7 to 11.
So the thing that I love about Benny's, and I went down and I talked to Mitchell, and I've been down there and stuff. The vibe right there in that lounge, it's really cool.
It is
and
so
I don't
cool.
think a lot of people. I think more and more people are learning about it. But I mean, it's a good sound.
Yes.
It's a great location.
Yes.
Great views.
Yes.
So I mean, you're playing there and,
And
you're
great
looking
for
out the
people
window.
watching because you get to see all the tourists come in.
Oh, yeah.
Who don't have a clue. And then I just found out about the wine. Did you know about the wine?
Yes.
They have over 10,000.
It's unbelievable. They have like one of the largest wine cellars in the city.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
had no idea. They took me in there the other day, and I don't drink, so I
Mm-hmm.
can't really enjoy it. But I was just amazed by all the different wines. And then Mark, you know Mark, right? Mark is the wine guy.
Yes, well, I met him once.
What's
yeah.
the word? Sommelier. And he knows all those wines.
Not even close.
Sommelier.
Yeah, whatever.
Sommelier.
anyway,
You guys
yeah.
made me go the other sommelier. Yeah.
So I'm at Benny's, and then of course I have the second Tuesdays, which I usually don't sing. I'm just the boss. Remember that when you get there. And
Where is that? Is there a regular location?
we are
for
at
that?
Augustus Tolton School, 7120 South Calumet, and we are there from 7 to 10.
Okay.
And it's the school for St. Columbinus. People who live on the south side know that huge Catholic church.
Yeah.
So we're right behind that Catholic church.
Now, Chuck, we were talking a little bit about this off camera too. You toured with a lot of different people and played with a lot of different people, and one of them happened to be Aretha Franklin.
Yes.
And since she just passed away, I thought we'd bring this up while we're talking because you were like her regular bass player for maybe many years, but you would do some one-offs with her and stuff.
A year or so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So what was it like working with the Queen of Soul?
It was.
Was it a big band or was it?
Well, the way she would do it was she would have a core band that
Okay.
she would travel with, so a rhythm section, sometimes background vocalist, percussionist, and then she would hire local musicians, so local horn sections, and so that's the way it
Kind of
worked.
fill in. So
Yeah.
if it's a 10-piece band, there's like 6 core guys and whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And at the time I was working with her, it wasn't really touring. She would do maybe one show a week, something like that, or if we had a couple of dates that were close together, maybe a couple in a row.
Yeah.
And it was later in her career, but her voice was still incredible. Fantastic voice. And I remember the first night I was on stage with her and playing her hits, and hearing that voice come and realizing that, man, I'm playing, with that. This is it. This is
right
the
there.
sound, right? And a couple of times I had to catch myself and concentrate on what I was doing because it was just amazing what she did.
Wow. What was she like to work for?
She was cool. She wasn't, at the time I was there, she was a little bit. She was the queen,
Right.
and it was like very, made very clear that this is the queen. You're in the band, and that's the way it is. And because I was a new guy,
Right.
So that, but it was fine. She was.
Was
very
her
cool.
son running the band, or didn't her son or somebody run the band at one point?
I think her son was kind of had phased out of
Okay.
being the day-to-day
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah.
But I have so many fond stories. One terrifying story.
Well,
of
let's hear
working-
that one.
Well,
let's hear that one. That's the one we want to hear.
I think this was my first or second gig with her, and the tour manager came up to me and said, "Miss, this is the first gig. Miss Franklin is going to play a few songs on piano, and she just wants bass and drums to accompany her.
Yeah.
She's going to do blah, 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 these 3 songs.
Yeah.
3 songs that I had never heard before.
Oh.
And I said, okay, are they in the book? You know, he said, oh, no, there's no charts for them. This is 10 minutes before we're about to go on stage. I think this was a big county fair for 20,000 people.
Oh yeah.
Right?
No pressure.
No. Right? So it's like, okay, he left. I'm like, YouTube, Google, right? Here's the song. Okay, I see. All right, this is where your ear training comes in. All right, 1 6 the bridge goes to 4. Okay, da da da. All right, got that one. All right, so I'm almost kind of cool with what's going on. Right. Get through the first 2 songs. I'm thinking, all right, this is gonna work, right? She starts playing another song. Not one of the 3 that I was kind of got together. Not in any key. It was just like a totally different song that I was prepared to do. So it was kind of like, listen, play. All right, I know what key it's in, and let's just follow along, right?
Yeah.
So after I kind of toweled myself off,
myself together. You're like,
I made it through.
It's over.
I made it through. She did comment. She said, I think she said through someone else. The bass player sounds good, but he's got it. He needs to know my material, and that quote, my material, right? She's got like how many 5,000 songs, and may pick anyone at any time.
Wow.
So that just kind of lets you know that's the gig. You're playing with Aretha, and hey, you either do it or you don't.
Well, and there's probably a lot of guys like that. I mean, I'm sure, Margaret, you've played with a lot of people where they just get up there and maybe you're the side. Margaret, let's play this tune in this key. Here we go, and they just start. And you're like, okay, well.
That's why I don't work a lot.
That's why you work your own stuff.
That's why I do my own stuff.
That's why you're in charge of your own stuff.
Yes.
All right, so everyone can come and see you guys. Now, wait, I got to ask the obvious question. How did you guys first meet? Was it on a gig?
There's a little controversy about this, but here's my side of the story. I was playing in a band, local group called the Ken Gano Quintet.
Okay.
Ken Gano's a vocalist percussionist, and one day we would rehearse in his basement, and one day he said there's going to be we're going to have a singer on for this particular gig, and it was Margaret, and she may not even remember, but I remember that meeting her at that time.
I remember being in the basement, but I do not remember Charles.
She doesn't remember. This is the impression that I made
Chuck
on my
wasn't
wife.
that memorable.
Right.
It's like, what?
And so that was how we met. For me, that's how we met. She may have a totally different
She
story.
saw you and she blacked out. She
just
couldn't believe the beauty, Chuck.
She was just
I
like,
used to
whatever.
see him playing out all the time, and I would say, man, he's not around a lot. And I used to laugh at his hair because he used to have that high top.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
I
was
said,
so stylish, she was not ready. You
Right,
know, back
she
in the
wasn't
day,
ready for that.
and he was so skinny. But this is where the big fight comes in. So we were both playing at the back room. I was with Charlie Johnson,
Okay.
and he was playing with Carmen Stokes. Just I'm gonna make it real.
And now
fast.
both of them were playing at Benny's.
You know what this isn't that something? Isn't that something? And so one night, one of my friends called me and said, "You should go see Carmen because I'm budding keyboardist. You should go see Carmen." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go see Carmen." I went to the back room that night to see Carmen, sat in my usual seat, and there Charles was in all his splendor. And I said, "Man,
Now it's splendor.
Chuck
Here before it
Webb,
was-
Chuck Webb is so handsome." So when he came down, I said, "I'm gonna make my move." And I went, and he was talking to the keyboardist, and I said, "Chuck Webb, hey, how are you? You remember me? I'm Margaret Murphy. Not Margaret Murphy, but I'm Margaret Murphy." And he said, "Oh, hey," and he was holding something, some water maybe. He said, "Hey, Margaret, how are you? Nice to see you," and turned back to that keyboardist like I wasn't even standing there.
Now,
So
there you go.
So I was like, okay. So I went home, and I thought it was over. He showed up at the back room one night. He came up with his bass on his back, walked down the middle, and said, "Margaret, I didn't know you were such a good entertainer." I said, "Okay, maybe I got him." He left. Charlie and I did a CD that was totally jacked up. Some kind of way it was jacked up. Charlie said, "I know somebody who can fix this CD, but we're going to have to go meet with him."
Him.
It was him.
It was me.
It was him.
Yeah, I had a studio. Fix the CD. CD sounds great now.
And I didn't like
edit.
him because he kept telling me to order food. I got to eat. You got to order some food. But it worked out.
It worked out.
You warmed up to it, apparently.
I warmed up, and I've been with him ever since. I like him.
Well, now you guys can all go see them both because they're married now, and they're performing live at the Chicago Jazz Fest September 1st, Jazz and Heritage Stage, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Chuck Webb Band featuring Margaret Murphy-Webb.
Yes.
Of course, get all the information. We've got chuckwebbmusic.com. We've got margaretcmurphy.com. We've got the the Southside Jazz Coalition.com.
Yes. And of course, the Chicago Jazz Fest. .us.
.us. And let's add one more to it. I have everything up on ChicagoJazz.com as well.
That's not enough.
Most importantly.
Well, I'm glad you guys made it down here. This worked out great. We got all the plugs in, I think. But the stories are unbelievable, man. We gotta
It's
have
the
you
tip of
get
the
back.
iceberg. There's so many stories.
I know.
You know, the best thing about this is that people tell me all the time about how quiet and low-key my husband is. Now you can see what I live with. He talks all the time. He's got a million stories. I just wanted to get that in.
Well, he does.
He does. He has a million stories. And I have to hear them.
She's heard them all twice.
All right, well, thanks for coming.
Thanks, man.
And everybody, hopefully they will see you at the Chicago Jazz Fest. Of course, Chicago Jazz Magazine will have our booth down there. We're going to be doing interviews at the fest as well, so stop by to find out if we're interviewing somebody you might want to learn more about. And get all the information on ChicagoJazz.com. And as I always say, hopefully you will see Margaret and Chuck somewhere this weekend or the next weekend coming up at the Chicago Jazz Fest. Hopefully I'll see you somewhere, but if I don't, hopefully I will see you somewhere out on the scene.